Vivian notices and then deliberately sets down because belonging to this place feels more urgent than trusting herself. The sun had climbed high enough to bleach the yard pale by the time Vivian carried her empty bucket to the borehole. The borehole was 20 minutes from the compound by foot, longer if you carried a full jerry can on your return. Vivian had made the trip 4 times before anyone spoke to her beyond the minimum required by her. Ada Obi was the kind of woman who occupied space generously. Her laughter arrived before she did, and her opinions settled into a room the way furniture does, as though they had always been there, and you were the newcomer. She was not unkind. That was the thing Vivian would remember later when she tried to make sense of everything. Ada was not an unkind woman. She simply believed that knowing things about people was the same as understanding them. You are Amika's wife, Ada said, as though confirming something she had already decided was true. Yes. Vivian smiled the smile she had been practicing, warm, unassuming, the smile of a woman who understood she was still being evaluated. Ah, Vivian, I know your name. Ada said it without cruelty, simply as fact. She shifted the weight of her own jerry can and looked at Vivian with the frank assessment of a woman who has learned to read people quickly, because quick reading is a survival skill in close quarters. You are adjusting. I am trying, Vivian said. Ada nodded, satisfied with that answer in a way she would not have been satisfied with something more confident. 2 other women were there. Ngozi, who was quiet in the careful way of someone who had learned that silence kept you out of trouble, and Chinyere, Ada's age mate, who laughed at everything Ada said approximately 2 seconds after Ada finished saying it. They arranged themselves around the borehole the way women do when they have shared that particular patch of ground long enough that their positions feel assigned. Vivian pumped water and listened, which was all that was required of her. The conversation moved in the way village conversation always moved, sideways, looping, arriving at its actual destination only after it had appeared to leave it behind entirely. They spoke about the price of tomatoes, about a wedding in the next compound where the bride's family had reportedly argued over the wine-carrying ceremony, about the pastor's wife, who had been seen buying fabric that was, by communal agreement, too young for her age. Vivian laughed when they laughed. She shook her head when they shook their heads. She was performing belonging, and she knew it, and she also knew that the performance, maintained long enough, sometimes became the real thing. It was Ada who shifted the conversation. She did it the way experienced women shift difficult conversations, without announcement, without obvious transition, so that you were already inside the new subject before you noticed you had moved. You live next to Mama Enkum, she said. Not a question. Oh, yes? Vivian kept her voice neutral. Ada exchanged a look with Chinyere that contained an entire paragraph. Chinyere's expression confirmed whatever Ada had communicated. Ngozi looked at the ground. Her husband's money, Ada said, lowering her voice just enough to signal that this was important without signaling that it was inappropriate, is buried somewhere in that compound. People have seen things near her doorway at night. She paused. Even Pastor, he did not say the name. Ought you understand that there was a Sunday, maybe 3 months ago, where his sermon was very specific about certain spiritual activities. We all understood who he meant. Vivian felt the weight of the moment, the way it was being placed in her hands. She understood that this was not merely information being shared. It was an invitation, a test perhaps, or something gentler than a test, an offering of trust, extended to see whether she would receive it correctly. She thought briefly of Mama Enkem's door at 9:30, the particular stillness of that side of the compound. She thought, I have not actually seen anything. She did not say this. Then, she said instead, which was not agreement.
Hello, family. Welcome back. Good morning, guys. Good evening, wherever. It depends wherever you're coming from, guys. I'm from Kenya, Africa. Yeah, right now it's in the morning.
Just be careful.
Kenya, Africa, Nairobi.
Bring into your marriage compound. Vivian did not argue with them.
Cambriam,
She simply nodded the
you have
way
a
all
difficult
students were
name.
nodding
You come
to
from
her,
New
but
Zealand?
everyone already knows everyone else.
New Zealand, which
What
place?
she did not realize, what none of the women at the borehole realized, was that someone inside the
And please
compound
don't forget to
was
subscribe to my
already
YouTube channel,
listening
guys.
to
I'm new
every
here,
word
kindly.
they said.
Yeah.
They walked back
In this
together,
channel, I'll be
and
talking.
all of them, Vivian
In this
matching
channel,
their
I'll be
pace.
sharing
Ada spoke about something else. The tomatoes
any
again,
step
or the wedding.
I'm going to
She
make
could not afterward remember which. The earlier
and any
conversation
blog
had
I'll
already
be
been
doing,
absorbed
guys.
into the
Kindly
texture of the
subscribe to my
morning,
YouTube channel,
the way
guys.
all village
Please
mornings were absorbed,
don't
without
forget to
ceremony,
subscribe.
without resolution, settling where beneath
I'm
the
new here,
lines,
guys. I'm new
where it would
here.
do its slow,
Just trying to do
quiet
something
work.
different.
Vivian arrived
Yeah.
home and set the jerry can down and stood in her kitchen for a moment before she began anything. Through the small window that faced the yard, Vivian could see Mama Income's door. It was still closed, perfectly still. The sun was high now and the compound was loud with ordinary life. But Mama Nkem's door remained closed, and for the first time that morning, Vivian noticed something she was certain had not been there earlier. Fresh footprints in the dust, leading to the door, none leading away. That same evening, Vivian could not settle. She cooked and cleaned and said the right things when Emeka came home, tired and hungry, and needing the house to be uncomplicated. She served
Hi,
his food
hi,
and
your
listened
ex,
to him talk
Danny.
about the land dispute
China,
his
which
uncle
place?
had brought to him again. A matter she had heard 3 versions of without ever
And
quite
don't forget to
understanding.
subscribe to my YouTube channel,
And she
guys.
nodded when
Please
the
don't
appropriate
forget.
places and refilled
Tell a
the food.
friend, that my name is COLLITER. I come from
She did not.
I come
She
from
lay
I
on
come
her
from
side of the
Kenya,
bed,
Nairobi,
watched the
Kenya.
ceiling, and listened to the compound.
I'm here to
Settle
make new
into itself
friends.
the way compounds do when
I'm
one
here
fully
to meet new
arrives.
friends, new
The
people,
generator
new
at the far
family.
end cutting off
Yeah,
at 10. The
this
last
is one of
glasses
my journey I
fading,
want to
and the
start.
kitchen
Kindly,
party
guys,
is
support
silent
me
and
wherever
belongs
you
to a
are,
place where people
where you
wake
can.
early
Please,
and
guys.
sleep accordingly.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm just trying to do something different in
She
my
did not
life,
move.
to
She
start
was
a
not
new
sure what
journey.
she
This
was
is
waiting
a new journey that
for.
I'm
She
trying
was
to
not
make,
willing yet to
guys.
name it.
Please
The
support
first
me,
night,
guys,
nothing happened.
by subscribing.
She fell asleep somewhere past midnight without
Thank you.
meaning to, and woke to the sound of a broom outside, and morning already decided. The second night, the same. The third night, she heard it. Not a sound exactly, more the absence of one. A door opening with the practiced care of someone who had learned how to turn a handle without the click. Vivian was at her window before she had fully made the decision to be there, her wrapper gathered loosely around her, her cheek near the edge of the curtain.
Please subscribe. Please subscribe.
Mama Enkem moved through the compound yard the way water moves, taking the path of least resistance, staying close to walls. When her feet
Subscribe,
finding
guys.
quiet places in the dirt, the moon that night was direct and unsentimental. It showed Vivian everything clearly. The cloth was
Subscribe,
pressed against
subscribe,
her
subscribe.
chest, both arms around it, solid, factual, beyond revision. She thought about what Ada had said, about the things seen near the doorway, about Pastor's unnamed Sunday sermon. The cloth had been wrapped tightly.
In this channel, I'll be doing some blogs.
Whatever was inside.
Okay, I'm a DJ.
Whatever was
I'll be
inside,
taking to
it mattered
some
enormously
places,
to the
for
woman
example,
carrying it.
where the
That
event
was
will
all
be,
she actually knew. But by the time she
going to
returned to
occur.
bed, her mind
I'll
had
be showing
already
how
done what minds do
how
when they have been fed a
how
story before they have
our
been given
country is.
facts.
I'll be
It
showing
had
how
filled the
Nairobi
empty
is,
spaces with what it had been
the
prepared to find.
the beauty of
She did
Nairobi,
not
the
wait
beauty
for
of
Mecca.
any city
The last question
you'd
she
like
could
to
not
see.
yet answer cleanly.
Yeah.
And she had learned in 7 months of marriage that he received incomplete information less
Please
well
don't
than
forget to
no
subscribe,
information
guys.
at all. She lay down and closed her eyes and listened for the gate. Mama and Kem returned before 4. Vivian heard the door. In the morning, Vivian went to the borehole earlier than necessary. Ada was not yet there when she arrived, but she came within minutes, Chinyere just behind her, and something in Vivian's posture must have communicated that she was carrying something. Due because Ada looked at her immediately with the alert attention of a woman who has been waiting for a particular conversation to arrive. You look like you did not sleep, Ada said. Vivian set her jerry can down. She had told herself walking over that she would say very little, that she would listen more than she spoke, that she was not certain.
Like right now, I'm trying to I'm trying to do a small mixtape or a small promo of my friend by the name Daddy Oil.
Lasted only a moment before Ada nodded. Slowly,
I do
with the
promos,
satisfied
I do
gravity of someone
mixtapes.
whose long-held
Yeah.
position has just been confirmed by a previously reluctant witness. You see now, Ada said, and Vivian, standing there in the early morning light with the image still clear in her mind, the careful arms, the bowed head, the way the cloth was held like something precious.
We have an event which will be occurring in Nairobi, Sitamkaren. So we are trying to do some preparation.
She told herself again that she was simply being careful.
Bujubura Kitela, wow, Silas, hi.
Careful of what exactly or careful.
Silas, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel kindly. Don't forget, Silas. I'll be happy when you subscribe. You will subscribe to the channel.
On Saturday morning, and every household was expected to send someone. Emeka had a commitment in town that he was not willing to rearrange, so Vivian went alone, which she understood, without anyone saying so, was also a kind of evaluation. The meeting was held under the large mango tree at the centre of the extended compound, the one whose roots had broken through the ground in places and created natural seating that the older women occupied without discussion. The younger women and wives stood or brought their own stools. Vivian borrowed a low bench from her mother-in-law's veranda and positioned herself close enough to participate and far enough not to presume. Chief Okonkwo arrived last, which was his custom. He was a man of perhaps 65, thick through the shoulders, with the deliberate movements of someone who had learned long ago that pace communicated authority. His wrapper was new, deep burgundy with gold thread, and several people remarked on it appreciatively as he inspired collective contribution. Then Chief Okonkwo shifted his weight, and the meeting shifted with him. He spoke slowly, his voice carrying the particular register.
Thanks, Silas. May God bless you.
Rooms lean towards certainty. He spoke about the village's
At
spiritual
DJ, everyone gonna follow.
the responsibility of those who share a compound
So, yeah, my guy.
to what enters through the gate. He used the
Echo,
word
my guy.
famous twice, and the second
Banangi.
time he used it, his eyes moved.
Tangu pate dem Burundi, sikei na amani dunia jamani. Nairobi sikei na amani. Silas tangu pate dem Burundi.
He did not say her name. He did not need to. Around Vivian, she felt the group absorb the message and solidify around it. Heads nodded. Someone said, "That is true," in the soft, confirming tone reserved for things that have just received official permission
Silas,
to be believed.
niaje? So, ambia hata shemeji jamani asubscribe hapa na nishukuru jamani.
The words were concerned, pastoral even, but the jaw held a tension that did not match the measured sorrow of his delivery. It was the face, she thought, without knowing what
Silas Sama is my friend, DJ Ego. Juma naitwanga DJ Ego na hata sijai.
See the wrapper, Ada whispered, the edges of a smile in her voice. Gold thread at his age. His wife must be very patient. The small laughter between them broke the moment cleanly, and Vivian let it break. She turned slightly toward Ada and smiled, and let the observation about the chief's face dissolve back into the general texture of the afternoon. The meeting ended shortly after.
Guys.
Women began collecting their stools and resuming their interrupted days.
My Nairobi people, my Kenyan people, hi.
And she told herself,
Send me your pin, I come where you are.
But that evening, standing at her window while the compound quieted for night, she found herself thinking again about the chief's jaw, the way it had held, the way his eyes had moved with such brief, practiced precision toward one specific doorway. She thought it for only a moment. Then Emeka called her name from the bedroom and she went, and she did not return to the thought that night. But it stayed. Somewhere beneath everything else, it stayed. For several days after the compound meeting, Vivian noticed the shift without anyone announcing it. Women who had previously walked the full length of the compound without particular direction, now found reasons to stop short of Mama Ankom's end. Conversations that had once floated freely across the yard now lowered themselves when they reached a certain proximity to her door. It was not dramatic. It was the kind of social adjustment that happens when a group has received permission to act on what it already believed, and is now doing so with the quiet efficiency of people who consider themselves reasonable. Mama Ankom's door remained closed through all of it. Vivian watched this happen across several days and felt something she could not comfortably name. Not sympathy exactly. She had not yet earned the right to sympathy, having contributed her own small portion to the thing she was watching. Something more uncomfortable than sympathy. A growing awareness that the story she had participated in telling was moving now under its own weight, beyond what she had intended, if she had intended anything at all. A week after the meeting, she made a decision she framed to herself as practical. She would watch again, properly this time, not from her window with a half-formed interpretation already assembled. This was about truth. She did not examine. This was about truth. She did not examine too carefully whether it was also about having something more specific to bring to Ada. That night, she waited until Emeka was deeply asleep. Then she rose slowly and tied her wrapper and went to the window. She did not have to wait long. Just past midnight, to the familiar sound, that practiced, careful door, and Mama Nkem was in the yard. Vivian moved out through the back entrance of her side of the compound, staying close to the mud wall, her feet finding the soft edge of the path where the ground absorbed sound. The moon was full and indiscriminate, laying light evenly across the yard and the path beyond the gate, which meant Vivian had to rely on distance rather than shadow to remain unseen. Mama Nkem walked without hurrying, and her back was curved slightly forward over the cloth, and from behind, in the moonlight, she looked like a woman carrying something she refused to put down, regardless of how long she had been holding it. They moved through the gate and along the path between compounds. Vivian counted her own steps to keep her breathing steady. At the edge of the third compound along the path, where a neem tree marked the boundary between two family plots, Mama Nkem stopped. She stopped so suddenly that Vivian pressed herself against the compound wall and held completely still. Mama Ankom shifted the cloth in her arms. She adjusted her grip with the focused attention of someone who has been holding a specific position for too long and needs to find a better one. The fabric loosened slightly with the movement and fell open at one edge. Vivian saw the face, tiny, perfectly, completely formed. Dark skin, mouth slightly parted, no eyes closed with the absolute surrender of a newborn in deep sleep. One small fist had worked its way free of the wrapping and rested against the older woman's chest. Mama Nkem looked down at the child for a moment, just a moment, with an expression Vivian could see clearly in the moonlight. It was not the expression of a woman performing a ritual or burying anything or feeding anything that lived in a forest. It was the expression of a woman who was exhausted and afraid and doing the only thing available to her. Then she rewrapped the cloth carefully and continued walking. Vivian did not follow. She stood against the compound wall and listened to Mama Nkem's footsteps fade, and the night continued around her unchanged, and she became aware slowly that her hand was pressed flat against her own chest, as though she had felt something strike it. She walked home in the silence of someone who has just had a belief removed from them without their consent. She sat on the edge of the bed and did not lie down. Outside, the compound was perfectly still. Emeka slept undisturbed beside her. The sky beyond the window began, after a long time, to consider the possibility of morning. She did not sleep. She did not yet know what to do with what she was carrying now. But she understood, sitting there in the dissolving dark, that whatever she decided next, she could no longer claim she did not know. Vivian spent the 2 days following the night at the neem tree in a state she could not describe to anyone around her. She cooked and swept and answered when spoken to. She accompanied her mother-in-law to the market on Thursday morning and carried the bags and negotiated mildly over the price of stockfish, the way she had learned to do. She sat with Emeka in the evenings and listened to his day and offered her own carefully edited version of hers. From the outside, nothing had changed, but she had stopped sleeping past 3. She would wake in the dark and lie still and see the infant's face, that small surrendered mouth, that one free fist, and feel the weight of what she now knew pressing against the inside of her chest with no outlet. She had not gone back to Ada. She had not said anything further about Mama Nkem to anyone. This was not courage. It was the paralysis of a woman who has seen something that dismantles the story she has been living inside, but does not yet have a replacement story to offer. On the 4th day, she made a decision that arrived less as resolution and more as the inevitable end of being able to do nothing. She had noticed on the night she followed which compound Mama Nkem had entered. The third along the path, and the one with the neem tree at its boundary. She knew, from months of compound geography absorbed through proximity, that the elder who lived there was called Mama Shidera, a woman of perhaps 70 who moved slowly and spoke rarely and was left largely to herself in the way the very old are left to themselves once they are no longer considered useful to the immediate business of the living. That afternoon, after her mother-in-law had gone inside to rest and the compound had quieted to its midday stillness, Vivian tied her wrapper and walked the path. She knocked twice at Mama Chidera's door, lightly, the way you knock when you are not entirely certain you have the right to be there. The old woman who opened it looked at Vivian for a long moment without speaking. Her eyes were the eyes of someone who had been carrying information for a long time and had grown tired of its weight without having anyone trustworthy enough to set it down with. She stepped aside and let Vivian in. The room was small and warm, smelling of camphor and something cooked earlier that morning. A single window admitted a column of afternoon light. In the corner, in a low wooden crib that looked as though it had been constructed carefully by someone who knew what they were doing, the baby slept. Vivian looked at the child and then looked away, because looking felt like something she had not yet earned permission for. She sat on the low stool Mama Chidera indicated and folded her hands and said, simply, "Tell me what happened, please." Mama Chidera sat across from her and was quiet for a moment, in the way of someone deciding not how much to say, but where to begin. She began with the girl's name. "Adaise," she said, 23 years old. The kind of daughter a woman builds her old age around. Careful, bright, obedient in the ways that mattered, and quietly determined in the ways that did not show. She had been everything Mama Nkem had after the husband died. Everything she had worked toward. The man had come from within the village. Mama Shidera did not say his name yet, and Vivian did not ask. He was married, she said. Established. The kind of man whose attention, when it fixed on a younger woman, arrived dressed as care and took a long time to reveal itself as something with a cost attached. When Adaise told her mother she was pregnant, Mama Chidera said the man's response was immediate and organized. There was money, there were arrangements, there was a relative in Port Harcourt who could be trusted to receive her, a clinic that would be discreet, a story prepared for the village about visiting family. Everything managed, except the one thing that could not be managed from a distance. Adaise did not come home. Mama Chidera paused here. Outside, a bird moved through the compound. The baby shifted in the crib without waking. She said, the baby came out alive. Adaise did not survive the bleeding that followed. The relative in Port Harcourt was a good woman. She called immediately. She handled what needed to be handled with dignity. She brought the child to the bus station herself and waited until Mama Nkem arrived to collect her. Mama Nkem buried her daughter in Port Harcourt, quietly, without the village's prayers or the community's food or any of the public structures of grief that are supposed to hold a mother when the worst thing happens. Because the worst thing had arrived wearing shame, and shame does not permit full mourning. You grieve in whatever corners are available to you. She came back to the village with the child and told no one.
There is a global network of more than 200,000 suppliers, factory direct sourcing, and fast delivery.
Vivian sat very still on the low stool and listened to all of this, and felt something clarifying inside her with a coldness that was not the absence of feeling, but its purest, most concentrated form. Speak to anyone she passed. She entered her side of the compound. She set water to boil for no reason she could name, and stood at her kitchen window watching the flame without seeing it. The name Mama Chidera had given her, the father's name, sat inside her like something she had swallowed that would not digest. It explained the compound meeting. It explained the measured voice and the careful pause in the jaw that held too tightly for a man expressing genuine spiritual concern. It explained everything, and the clarity of that explanation made it worse, and not better. That evening, Emeka came home and found his food warm and his wife quiet in the particular way that wives are quiet when they are managing something they have decided not to share yet. He did not ask. He ate and watched a program on his phone and fell asleep by 9. Vivian lay beside him and stared at the ceiling and conducted the calculations she had been avoiding since she left Mama Chidera's room. If she told Ada, Ada would want to know how she knew, or she would have to explain the following: the night, the visit to Mama Chidera. Her mother-in-law would hear that she had been moving through the village at midnight, tracing a neighbour's movements. Emeka would hear that she had been collecting private information about compound matters without telling him, and the village, which had spent weeks building a particular story about Mama Nkem, would not receive a correction gracefully. And communities did not dismantle their own certainties without first examining the person who had brought the disruption. She told herself she was waiting for the right moment, that she needed to think carefully about how to speak without causing more damage than the silence was already causing. Beneath that reasoning, in the place she did not look at directly, she knew the truth. She was waiting for the cost to come down. She was hoping that some arrangement would present itself that would allow her to do the right thing without paying the full price of having done the wrong one first. The days that followed moved with the ordinary rhythm of compound life, and Vivian moved inside them like a woman wearing something uncomfortable that no one else could see. She heard Ada, one morning near the standpipe, tell Ngozi that Mama Nkem had not greeted her when they passed in the narrow path between compounds. Ada offered this as evidence of something. Ngozi agreed that it was. Vivian stood within earshot and rinsed her cup and said nothing. Later that same week, she passed Mama Nkem's door on her way to her mother-in-law's veranda. The door was open for once, just slightly, and through the gap, Vivian could hear the very soft, very specific sound of a baby being settled. That rhythmic, patient shushing that belongs only to someone who has done it through exhaustion and does it still because the alternative is the child's distress. And the child's distress cannot be permitted to be heard. Vivian walked past without slowing. She sat with her mother-in-law and answered questions about Emeka's appetite and whether the rain had affected the roof and when they planned to visit her family in Lagos. She was present and appropriate and agreeable, and she felt, with a precision that surprised her, exactly what her agreeableness was costing. She thought about the bride price, not the ceremony or the celebration or the pride her family had taken in the amount agreed upon. She thought about what it had actually purchased. This, the expectation of her alignment, the assumption that she had been received into this compound's consensus, along with everything else that came with her. She had been agreeable for so long and so consistently, or that she was no longer certain whether it was her nature or simply a habit that had calcified into something resembling one. She went home that evening and sat on the edge of her bed in the gathering dark, and did not turn on the light for a long time. The right moment did not come. It was not coming. She was beginning to understand that the right moment was not a thing that arrived. It was a thing you decided to create, at whatever the current cost happened to be, not because the alternative was to keep paying a different kind of price indefinitely. She was not ready yet, but she was closer than she had been the day before. 3 weeks had passed since Vivian's visit to Mama Shidera, and the knowing had become a permanent resident inside her, present at every meal, every compound conversation. Every morning she watched Mama Nkem's door from her window and said nothing. She had told herself across those weeks that she was being strategic, that speaking without a plan would cause more harm than the current arrangement, that Mama Nkem had survived this long and would continue to survive, and that Vivian, inserting herself without preparation, could destabilize whatever fragile equilibrium existed. These were not lies exactly, but they were not the full truth either. The full truth was that she was afraid, and fear, she had discovered, was remarkably patient. It would wait indefinitely for the conditions of courage to improve. And the conditions never improved, and the waiting continued. It was a Thursday evening when her mother-in-law appeared at her door. Vivian had been inside preparing groundnut soup, the kind that required attention and did not forgive distraction. She heard the knock and called entry, and her mother-in-law came in and sat on the bench near the door with the particular posture of a woman carrying news she considers settled. She had been at the market that afternoon, she said, and had spoken to Elder Boniface's wife. The elders had met. There had been a formal request, she used the phrase community welfare concern, submitted through the proper channels, asking that Mama Nkem be given notice to vacate her section of the compound within the month. A letter had been drafted. It was, her mother-in-law said, the right outcome for everyone involved. She said it without visible cruelty. That was the thing. She said it the way people say things that have received official approval, with the mild, resolved tone of someone reporting a decision rather than making one. Vivian stood at the pot and did not stir it for a moment. She thought of a dance, buried quietly in Port Harcourt with no village present, no collective grief, no food brought by women who knew her since childhood. She thought of the baby in Mama Chidera's crib, that small, surrendered fist. She thought of Chief Okonkwo at the compound meeting, his jaw held carefully, his eyes moving with practiced brevity toward one specific door. She thought of how cleanly he had converted his own fear into institutional process, dressed it in the language of community concern, and sent it through elders who believed they were acting on principle. She set the wooden spoon on the counter. She turned to face her mother-in-law, who was still speaking. Something about the compound's reputation, and about how these things must be handled before they become larger. And Vivian waited until the sentence finished. Then she said quietly and without agitation, I need to tell you something. Her mother-in-law stopped. She looked at Vivian with the expression of a woman who has just registered, in the quality of those 5 words, that the conversation she thought she was having is not the conversation that is actually happening. Vivian pulled the bench from under the table and sat down across from her, and she began. Vivian's mother-in-law did not speak for a long time after Vivian finished. She sat on the bench with her hands folded in her lap and her face arranged in the careful stillness of a woman processing something that is reorganizing the furniture of everything she thought she knew. The groundnut soup had gone quiet on the stove. Outside, the compound moved through its evening routine, unindifferent to what was happening inside this kitchen. Finally, her mother-in-law said, You are certain of this. It was not quite a question. It was the last door a person checks before accepting that the house has changed. I am certain, Vivian said. Her mother-in-law stood and left without another word, which Vivian understood was not coldness, but the specific withdrawal of a woman who needs to be alone with the truth before she can decide what to do with it. That night, Vivian did not sleep well, but it was a different quality of sleeplessness than the weeks before. The previous sleeplessness had been the restlessness of a woman carrying something she was refusing to set down. This was quieter. The carrying was not over, but she had finally acknowledged out loud and to someone who mattered within the compound structure that she was carrying it. She woke before 5, before Emeka, before the compound's first sounds. She dressed quietly and tied her wrapper and went outside into the grey, unhurried light of very early morning. She crossed the compound yard and stood at Mama Enken's door. She raised her hand to knock, and before she completed the second knock, the door opened. Mama Enkem stood in the doorway with the baby against her chest. Openly, the cloth loosely draped rather than tightly wound, the child's face visible and calm in the morning dimness. She was smaller than she appeared from across the yard. Her head wrap had been tied sometime in the night and had shifted slightly to one side.